Ghosts of the Deep is widely accepted to be the best part of Season of the Deep in Destiny 2, even though it's really not part of the season. You're here because you want to figure out how to solo flawless this dungeon in the easiest way possible. I've helped thousands of other people with the Titans and the Warlocks, but now Hunters, it is your time to learn how to solo flawless this dungeon. Whether you're looking for some of the best armor in the game, some of the best weapons in the game, and the exotic Navigator trace, or maybe you're just trying to get the Ghoul seal filled out, this video is going to show you every single thing that you need to do. Other videos I've seen are just full run-throughs of the dungeon, or they're damage checks, or they're just dim loadouts, and I think you've come to this video because you're looking for a little bit more. I'm going to show you the best gear to use, exactly where to stand, exactly what to do, and as always, we're going to use it with easily accessible solo gear, weapons, and builds that anybody can get right now. Here's how anyone can solo flawless the Ghosts of the Deep dungeon on Hunter. Really quickly before we get into the guide, I need to say thank you to everyone for helping me reach my huge milestone of 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you've been here for a while, thanks so much. If you're new, welcome. After this video, we're going to be covering some god rolls, as well as revisiting lots of solo content inside of Destiny 2, including revisiting the old dungeons with the new meta in Season 22. So for those 85% of people who watch my content but aren't subscribed, maybe turn on the subscribe button so that you don't miss any of that stuff coming up. And as always, big smooch. If this is your first time watching one of my guides, I want to let you know that I have a ton of information inside the video, so I'm going to organize it in a way that you can really easily follow with timestamps in the description box for every major section in the guide. We'll cover the builds and the gear that you're going to want to be using. Along with those builds, I'm going to show you the solo breakdown, including the order of things that you should be doing and things you should be thinking about with those builds. And then finally, we'll end with a section of tips and tricks that I've found when running this dungeon solo flawless multiple times. Let's show you the subclass breakdown, the aspects, and the fragments that you're going to be using on an Arcstrider Hunter. We're going to be using the Gathering Storm super ability because it's one of the best that you can get inside of PvE right now. The melee we're going to use is very important and key to how we're going to use our build to nail this dungeon down. We're going to be using the Gambler's Dodge, where when we dodge near enemies, it's going to fully recharge our melee ability. You can use whatever jump you'd like, but for the melee, you need to be using Combination Blow. It is by far the best PvE melee that probably exists in the game, or at least for Hunters. When you kill an enemy with your melee, it will fully refill your class ability energy. It will also give you a little bit of health back, but most importantly, you're going to combine this with your class ability by dodging, punching, and dodging and punching to build up Combination Blow, so you can basically one-shot every enemy that is near you. Here's what that loop looks like. I get a kill with my melee, I dodge with enemies near me, and then I instantly get my melee back. This chain is what allows you to kill a huge number of enemies inside this dungeon, especially since there are so many and they're very close to you. The biggest thing is making sure that you can get to Combination Blow ×3 to keep your damage of your melee up. To make this even more broken, we're going to use the aspect of Lethal Current, where after we dodge, our next melee attack is going to have increased lunge range, and it will most importantly jolt the target. Along with Combination Blow, this thing is absolutely broken and will help you deal with all the adds. The other aspect we're going to combine with this is the flow state aspect. When you defeat a jolted target, it will make you amplified, and with this, you're basically amplified infinitely with this build. When we're amplified, our dodge is going to recharge more quickly, we're more resilient to damage when dodging, and our reload speed is greatly increased. Now, there's some flexibilities to the fragments you would want to use, but for me, I used Spark of Magnitude, where our lingering arc grenades will have extended duration, and I used a pulse grenade because the Hive love to melee you. With Spark of Feedback, when you take melee damage, it briefly increases your melee damage. Combine that with Combination Blow, it is amazing, and it also gives you more resilience. In addition, I put on Spark of Haste, where you have greatly increased resilience, recovery, and mobility while sprinting, and then I wrap that up with Spark of Resistance. While surrounded by combatants, you are more resistant to incoming damage. It also increases your strength, which might help your melee, but there are a lot of enemies in this dungeon, and you will be surrounded often, especially if you're a solo player. This is a no-brainer to use, and one that I highly recommend. Now, like I said, there is some flexibility. If you want to try and use a different fragment, you certainly can. For example, maybe you want to get more ionic traces. Maybe you want to jolt more targets. Maybe you want to use arc special weapons. The choice is yours, but I highly recommend the fragments and the aspects that I'm using with this build. With the seasonal artifact, we're basically going to try and augment everything that we use in our main build. So basically, we're going to use our arc mods, our melee mods, and anything that has to do with amplified or using an arc subclass. Now, none of these are required, but I definitely recommend electric armor, where you gain damage resistance when amplified, or shock and awe, where arc final blows when you're amplified summon a massive burst of lightning, which damages and jolts targets. All of these things are really nice. Not required, but I definitely recommend that you have them if you can. If you have any questions, leave them down in the comment section down below, but I'm also going to put the Destiny Inventory Manager links into the description of this video for each section. So if you want to check out the loadout that I use, including all of the different mods and things like that, they are going to be there. We're going to go over all the weapons and things you should use in the beginning of every section, so let's get to it. The first and easiest section of the dungeon is to break the ritual. Build that you use inside of here is not so important because it's very, very simple to do, but we're going to give you a fail-safe build anyway. You can put this right on your loadouts if you so choose. We're going to be using Assassin's Cowl as well as the different mods that you can see here on screen. We're going to be using the combination blow for much of this, but I highly recommend having Risk Runner in your inventory. While we're not going to use it necessarily for a weapon, it gives you Arc Conductor, which will give you arc resistance even when the weapon is stowed. For other weapons, it's not too important. I'm using a shotgun and an eager edge sword, but a blinding grenade launcher is also really good. For the exotic, I'm going to be using Assassin's Cowl. When I use powered melee final blows, it will grant me invisibility and restore more health and shields. If I use finishers in final blows against more powerful targets, it will increase the duration of invisibility. This is one of our main exotics that we're going to use through this dungeon. We're going to use this in the first phase and the final boss. The ability to go invisible while using arc is absolutely broken and a must-have to safely get through this in a very, very easy way. All right, let's show you the solo breakdown, all the things you need to be doing, and the mechanics. The core mechanic of this section is going to be used throughout the dungeon, so memorize it well. To start things off, kill these 2 knights that are guarding this door, and that will kick off the first encounter. Basically, once those knights are dead, and once you're done with one loop of the section of this, there's going to be an ogre that spawns down the main 3 roads leading to the ritual site. You want to knock out this ogre as safely as possible. A blinding grenade launcher, a shotgun, or using our combination blow, or even the sword is going to be really, really nice to do. Here's a loop of that using the combination blow strategy. And as soon as the ogre is dead, he's going to leave a green trail of hive goo leading you to the next section you need to go to. Follow that path pretty much exactly the way it goes, and it will take you to another area. There will be a hive symbol up above. There will be a bunch of wizards that you'll have to defeat and a bunch of other acolytes. As soon as all of the wizards are dead, it will then spawn a new green trail that you'll need to follow. If you're having any issues following that green trail, or you need to know where to go, look for the green hive symbol that is going to be floating above the area that you need to go to. You're going to repeat this for a total of 3 times. Now be careful in here because the wizards will hit you with their wizard farts, as I call them, the smoke that slows you down, and you can easily die from it if you're not paying attention. Continue to follow the path until you get to a section where there will be a bunch of acolytes that will spawn and no wizards. Once you start knocking out the enemies, a hive tomb ship will appear, and when that happens, one of the 3 lucent hive are going to spawn. It's going to be the Void Knight, the Arc Wizard, or the Solar Acolyte. They're going to be using their supers on you at this point, so the big thing to remember is don't just rush in, don't push really hard without having a plan. Use your combination blow, punching, use your melee, use your shotgun, your sword, whatever you want to use. At this point, there's going to be a hive ghost that you're going to need to finish. You need to memorize that symbol before you finish the ghost. Get into this habit right now. It will help you so much when you get to the final boss. At this point, use your sparrow and head back over to the hive ritual site. There's going to be a bunch of enemies that are going to spawn up, especially these hive knights that shoot solar and a ton of acolytes. You can just continue to use combination blow and go invisible constantly. I highly recommend that you go invisible. This is another good habit that will serve you well in the final boss section. To progress, all you got to do is knock out the Veil Weaver Wizard, Once she's knocked out, she will leave a deep sight node that you can reveal the different symbols in the ritual spot. Remember the ghost that you squished and the symbol that we told you to memorize? This is where you dunk it at the corresponding symbol. Nothing too crazy here, but the enemies can kill you if you're not paying attention, and that's it. You just have to do this a total of 4 times. So let's just review that really quickly. Kill the ogre, follow the paths, keep following the paths until you get to an area with a loosened hive, memorize the symbol above the ghost, finish off the ghost, and then head to the hive ritual point, knock out the wizard, then reveal the deep sight node, and then dunk the symbol in the corresponding hive statue. That's all there is to it. Here's a couple of tips and tricks that will help you in this very easy first section. First things first, if you want to, you can just farm this section over and over if you want to get some of the armor or the weapons from this section. It's a good way to practice the interaction or just getting used to doing things on your own completely solo, especially if you're someone who plays with other people. Doing things solo sometimes will feel a little bit different. In addition, every single time you move farther down the trail of the green hive goo, every location will have more hive enemies than the section before it. The big thing to know is that you can die even to these minor little adds, so you just have to have a plan when going in, whether it's using your combination blow smash or whatever you want to do. As I said earlier, make sure that you look at the symbol and then finish the loosened hive ghost. This is a really good habit that, again, will serve you very well as you continue to go through the dungeon. It's the right way to do things. Next up, and most importantly, you need to have a way to distinguish between all of the different hive symbols. You can use some of the things that are named here on screen. Some people really like to use their own creations, and the community has come up with some very colorful versions of them, but use whatever works for you. The biggest thing is don't go in thinking that you're going to just memorize some random symbols. Have a name for all of them, as that will help you memorize them as you go through the dungeon. It is critical to make sure that you dunk the correct one, because if you do not, you will die instantly, which will ruin your run. Another good habit to develop is to use your invisibility to activate the deep sight. So when you're ready, kill the wizard, and what you do then is you use your assassin's cowl, go invisible, and then you can reveal the deep sight node. Then you can find the symbol all while you're invisible, and the enemies will not be shooting you. This is also really good for the boss fight as well. That you can pick up your chest and move on. I'm going to speed through this jumping / water puzzle because most people have gone through that. If you need to figure out your way to go through this, you can use the YouTube speed tool, which is down in the preferences. It's the little gear marker, and you can turn the speed down so you can follow the path that I do. There are a couple of enemies in this section and throughout this area, and we'll go through them, but really quickly, all you need to know is just to continue to use the combination blow and the assassin's cowl build. It will make quick work of all the different enemies. At this point, then you'll end up down inside of the water. We're going to show you a quick shortcut. That elevator area is where they want you to go, but instead go to the hard left. You'll see a bubble out of a window. The window is actually open. Take that path and go all the way down, following the bubbles all the way down until you don't see any more. You can actually die if you go too far, but as long as you follow the bubbles like you see here on screen, you will be absolutely fine. Basically, just when you stop seeing bubbles and there's a platform with some bubbles and you don't see any more, just fall down and then go up through the fan. This is the way that the game is forcing you to go, even though you probably could make it all the way and stay alive. Otherwise, you'll run into a turnback zone and you'll be dead. Keep falling down in this section. You'll eventually come to a spot where there will be a red light and there will be a big bubble. Don't go to the big bubble. It looks like you can, but if you do, you will go and hit another turnback zone. This is the area that you want to go to. Go up through the fan and continue to follow the path here. Eventually, you'll fall down into the water, and then you'll find yourself in this section, which is the correct way to go. There is a shortcut to the first secret chest. Hop over onto the ledge over here. You'll find yourself into a path where there is the first secret chest. It will give you anything that you've earned in the dungeon already, and you can only pick it up once a week. Instead of fighting all of these enemies, just skip by them if you're on the elevated platform and make your way to the next section. Here, you'll need to make sure that you have enough distance and enough jump, especially here. Hold your jump for a little bit longer than you think, like actually depress the jump button, and that will help out significantly. Once you get into this room, I highly recommend that since you're wearing Assassin's Cowl, that you just skip the enemies that are in here because they do hurt quite a bit. You can use your Risk Runner and clear them out a little bit, but it's a lot easier just to go invisible and then run past all of these enemies. It will save you a significant amount of time, and you don't have to fight them. It will also keep you safer. This area will have a bunch of Hive Tomb ships and a bunch of enemies that can kill you if you are not paying attention. This is where Risk Runner does great things because there will be a bunch of Hive Knight boomers that will be trying to kill you, and Combination Blow will also help you clear out all of these enemies. Once you've cleared all of them out, a bunch of wizards are going to spawn up and try to kill you, but luckily you've got Assassin's Cowl and you can go invisible, or you can just sword across. Be careful if you sword across because it will track into those wizards and you can end up falling down into the hole if you are not paying attention. Kill a few trash mobs and then get to this section. Make sure you depress your jump all the way and hold it down so you can get some movement. Another cool trick when you are in the water is to turn up your mobility and you will move faster through it. Once you get to this section, there will be a couple of Hive enemies that you're going to have to take out, but turn around and go on top of the frame of the door. You can skip a bunch of the jumping puzzle here and just deal with the enemies that you want to deal with. At this point, there will be a couple of trash mobs, a couple of thrall that you'll need to deal with. Nothing too crazy. Combination Blow will make quick work of them. However, there's a Shrieker that can easily kill you in this section. You want to make sure that you take it out, whether you're using a long distance weapon, if you want to use a sniper at this part, or if you just want to use Risk Runner and grenades and knock it out, you certainly can do that too. At this point, once you get past the Shrieker, there will be a bunch more enemies that you'll have to kill. I usually kill these first couple of enemies just using my Combination Blow, and then I use my super. This is a great spot for it because there are some large yellow bar enemies that you'll have to take out. Once you go through there, follow the path that you see here on screen and find your way into this room with multiple holes. Now, once you get into this room, you'll feel like, hey, I can just jump into any of them. You do not want to do that. Instead, you want to look for these two canisters kind of pointing that way and jump into that hole right there. This is the one spot where you're mostly safe when you go down the water slide. There's going to be a ledge right here that you'll fall onto. If you go through any of those other holes, you could potentially find yourself in the drink, and that would be no good and end your solo run again. Turn around and follow the path that you see here on screen. Eventually, you'll find yourself in the water location of the second encounter. You'll want to pick up some air bubbles so that you can get up into the fan area where you're going to fight Ecthar, who is the second encounter. This section, like the opening, has a lot of flexibility, but there's two basic builds that I'm going to be using. I'm going to be using Liar's Handshake for the ability to take down big enemies really quickly. When I use my arc melee ability, or if I'm being hit by a melee attack, it allows me to follow up with an extremely powerful melee counterpunch that will heal me. This is going to be really good in this section. There is an option that you can use with Tractor Cannon, which we'll cover here in a second, but I'm actually going to be using Arbalist to break the shield of Ecthar so I can instantly start doing damage with my super. If you want to see the build in all of its glory, here it is with all the different mods and things like that. I definitely recommend that you have Proximity Ward on because you could finish things, especially like your Ghost, and you can get an Overshield. I also highly recommend that you get some type of a rocket launcher with bipod. There are multiple options, but the reason it's so important is not for damage, but it's because it overfills our heavy slot with ammo. And when we do that, when we switch to a different weapon, we can actually get more ammo in the magazine, which is really important because we're going to switch off of Arbalist to a different exotic. There are 3 rockets that can come with bipod, and that's the Braytech Osprey, which you can get from just doing strikes. So if you don't have it, go run some strikes. You might get a drop. In addition, it does come on a raid weapon. Again, it is not required, but you can get it on the Apex Predator if you're someone who has ground Last Wish, or of course, the rocket from this very dungeon, Cold Comfort, can roll with it, and that is what I am using for my build. But I highly recommend that you get one. If you don't have one and you don't want to do a dungeon or do a raid, go run some strikes. You'll eventually get a Braytech rocket launcher with bipod. To do max damage on the boss, we're going to hit him with an Arbalist shot to rip down his shields and then instantly hit him with our Gathering Storm super. Once we do that, we're going to switch to our damage loadout that only has a couple of quick changes. First things first, make sure that you have 3 solar weapon surges on, and then we're going to also make sure we have extended time dilation on our class ability, and then we're going to be using Lament for damage. For those of you that don't know, the Lament is the exotic quest sword from Beyond Light, and it is great for a number of reasons. First of all, it allows you to charge it up, and then when you use that charge and use different combos, it does insane damage. It will also heal you the more swipes that you do with Lament, which is going to be really important for this boss. All right, let's show you the mechanics and the solo breakdown. First things first, kill the enemies that are standing by Ecthar, and then come up here. There are going to be 3 blistered knights. They're going to be large yellow named knights. You need to kill them to spawn a blistered ogre. To stay alive in this section, because there is a lot of damage coming at you, you're going to continue what you've been doing before, which is the dodge melee, dodge melee, dodge melee. In addition, Ecthar is going to be in this area, so just watch your life counter. But once you get those 3 knights down and you kill the ogre, which is pretty easy to do with cross counter and the liar's handshake, what you're going to do is head down to the area where Ecthar spawned into. There's like a pool of water in the center of the room. That's kind of how he moves between the 2 different areas. And you're going to reveal the deep sight. On the wall, there are going to be multiple circles that will then reveal hive symbols. You'll need to memorize all 3 of the hive symbols and then head downstairs to the water area and activate the runes. While this is going on, Ecthar is underwater with you, so you have to be careful to make sure that he doesn't bash you with his shields, because when he does that, he removes quite a bit of the pressure resistance that you have built up. You'll have to find the different bubbles that are here underwater, look for the symbols, touch the rune, and once you hit all 3 of them, that will spawn hive lucent wizards upstairs, which you'll need to use to progress the encounter. The good folks on Reddit have put together a very good map if you are not experienced in going underwater and finding all of the locations. Use that map as your guiding point and start to memorize where you can when you can. When you're all done and you've activated all 3 of the hive symbols, and then head to the fan on the far side of the room. Launch yourself up into the upper area, and then now you have to kill 3 of the lucent hive witches. We're going to continue just using our combination blow melee dodge repeatedly. You can also use your shotguns with 1-2 punch, which is what I was using in case if you want to do even more damage, and then you can kill those hive really quickly. At this point, once you have one of the ghosts finished, you'll have a vestige of light. You'll need to deposit it in one of the 3 hive statues located around the room. I generally like to make sure that I get the far statue first, and when I'm doing this, I'm just meleeing constantly and making sure that I build up lots of orbs of power and basically just making sure that I stay alive. Every time I get a bunch of kills with my melee, I continue to get health, and this is how you're going to be able to stay alive through this section. There will also be some hive boomer knights that you'll want to take out as much as possible. They continually respawn, but if you can get them to die and not be in the area where you're going to do damage, it's going to help out a ton. I've killed the second wizard, and now I have a vestige of light. I'll deposit it in the second statue. I generally leave the side statues for the second and the third, whatever you're comfortable with. I like to make sure that I dunk there. I generally like the right side statue right before I do damage. It's just what I'm used to, but you've got to use whatever feels good to you. Once you've killed the third and final wizard and killed the ghost, you'll have the third and final vestige of light. At this point, you want to make sure that you've got all of your abilities back, whether you're punching and meleeing. The biggest thing is I would make sure that you have as many armor charges and combination blows as you can. This is also a good time to make sure that all the boomer knights are out of the entrance side of the room so that you can cleanly do damage. Once you are ready to go, you're going to imbue the final statue with the vestige of light and then head back to the entrance side of the room. Ecthar is going to spawn in his little kiddie pool to the right, but we're actually going to focus on the Wellkeeper Knight. Once we kill him, there will be a pool of light that we can stand in, hit him with Arbalest, and then instantly with our super. Hide behind this column here, and then turn to your damage loadout, and then you're good to do damage. This is a good point to charge your Lament. Just basically charge it for just a second, whatever button or combination you've got set up. And then when you do not have any melee energy, you can just basically swipe him with a normal sword. The combo that I use is to charge really quickly with the Lament and then do 4 light attacks and a heavy attack. That will give us a really nice combo here. Look at his chest, and if you see that the jolt effect is gone, this is a good time to hit him with another grenade. That will give him a little extra debuff that you can take advantage of. Let's show you that in slow motion so you know all the little details that I'm doing. I'm going to head once I've deposited the vestige of light and head to the Wellkeeper Knight. I'm going to take my shotgun with 1-2 punch and hit him with that and then melee him to kill him as quick as possible. I'll then get piercing light, and then I'll turn to my Arbalest, hit him with 1 shot, and then I'm going to hit him with my super. He'll instantly start to take damage, and it will also kill all the enemies that are around him, which means that you are more than safe, whether you're on mouse and keyboard, console, or controller, to switch to your other loadout. At this point, you can run up on the boss with your Lament ready to rock, and then charge it up really quickly. 4 light attacks and then a heavy attack. You can see I'm getting yellow numbers there. I'm doing a ton of damage. For those of you that don't know, you do not have the infinite ability to charge Lament. You'll see that the melee button, which was replaced with a sword energy button, actually goes away for a little bit, and you have to let it charge by not using the heavy attack. Once it's back up, then you can charge it again and do damage. During that time, I just use normal swipes with my Lament. That will help me keep my life. You'll notice that my life has not gone down at all at this section, or if it has, I instantly get it back by using my Lament and using the combos. Again, chuck a grenade here to make sure that I jolt the target. And here you can see I've got 2 armor charges. I have solar weapon boost. I'm doing a ton of damage here in this section. A really, really nice damage phase on Ecthar. Very safe and really easy to do. Once the damage phase is done, hop into the water and then switch your loadout, and then basically repeat this process until he dies. Now, there is another damage loadout that some content creators prefer, and I'm going to share that with you here. This is where you use a 1-2 punch shotgun along with tractor cannon to do a massive amount of damage to the boss. Basically, you take a 1-2 punch shotgun along with Liar's Handshake, tractor cannon, shotgun, melee. And basically, you just continue this process of shotgun, melee, then tractor cannon, and then you have to refresh your combination blow. I'm not a huge fan of this just because it's a little bit more complicated than just Lament go burr. There's a lot more timing involved. You've got to get your swaps better. You've got to refresh combination blow, but you may find that this is something that you like to do. And if so, I'll put it as an optional dim link down below. All right, time for some tips and tricks for Ecthar. First things first, whenever you go into the water, you get a free overshield, so you can use that to your advantage if you're getting shot by a lot of different enemies. In addition, you don't have to get everything in one shot. If you want to get 2 rune symbols and then head back up, kill 2 wizards, and then go back down, you certainly can do that. You want to do whatever helps you stay alive for the longest period of time. Generally, if you're using combination blow and continuing to melee things, you'll be fine, but if you need to, you can hide in the hallway on the far side of the room by the hive statue in the back. You can basically just hide there if you need to catch your breath or if you need to go take care of something or use the restroom. Now, I mentioned this a little bit earlier, but in the damage area close to Ekthar's kiddie pool, and you have more time than you think. Once you pick up a vestige of light, you've got like a minute of time before you have to dunk it. So you've got plenty of time to set things up so you can make sure that you have a really good, clean damage phase. It's better to take an extra second to clear out a night. Just watch that timer. Continue to use Lament until Ecthar dies, and of course, don't forget the ghost. So make sure you finish the ghost, and then you are set, and you've completed Ekthar's encounter. A very short jumping puzzle awaits you, and just follow the path that you find on screen. There are a couple of enemies in this jumping puzzle that you'll need to worry about, and the very first one is a set of cursed thrall that spawn up by the back stairway as you enter this room. Just knock them out really quickly, and you'll be totally fine. Now, I've switched to my assassin's cowl again because I'm going to go invisible, and I'm going to basically skip through all this stuff just to save some time. I'm also going to move a sniper over because it may help me out a little bit later, either taking out the Shrieker or taking out the ogres. To skip this section, just dodge really quickly and get a melee off, and you'll be invisible. You can basically run through the section. If you don't feel comfortable doing this skip to save time, then just take a second and kill all the enemies, but do be careful because the wizards will respawn once you go past them. Now, you can dodge melee, that whole section, but I find the easiest thing to do is just go down where you need to go first, get on the opposite side of the ogre, kill the enemies from the back, instead of getting caught between the Shrieker and the ogre proper. Once you kill the Shrieker, you can jump on top of the gazebo, and the second secret chest will be located on top there. Go down the hole in the next section, and then you'll find yourself in the final encounter. Many people find the Necromancer one of the hardest bosses in Destiny 2, but the truth is, if you understand how the encounter works, it is very easy to handle, but it can seem really chaotic if you don't know what's going on. So let's dispel some of that, shall we? Let's get into the builds and gear we need to use, and I need to actually talk about something, which is the heavy weapon we're going to be using for damage. That, of course, is going to be Leviathan's Breath. Now, if you have this weapon, great. If you don't have the catalyst, maybe look at using a linear fusion like a Taipan or something like that. But we need to address the elephant in the room, and I've gotten this on many comments on my previous videos. There's this theory that Leviathan's Breath does more damage on PC than it does on console, or more specifically on higher frame rate machines. Well, it's not completely wrong, it's not completely right. And I did a massive amount of damage testing inside of the dungeon to confirm what I have discovered. A lot of the theories come specifically from doing some damage testing on some specific bosses, like the Lost Sector bosses inside of Nessus. Here's an uncapped FPS version of this. Basically, there's a Cabal guy at the end, and when you hit him with uncapped FPS with Leviathan's Breath, he does take a significant little chunk of damage at the end, whereas if you put it on 60 FPS and you hit him with a Leviathan's Breath shot, that big tick of damage does not happen. So in this case, it's 100% confirmed, right? Well, not quite. I went into the dungeon specifically to test out these different frame rates. I've tested 30 FPS, 60 FPS, and uncapped frame rate. Long story short, I was not able to replicate that bug with Leviathan's Breath at any frame rate inside of the dungeon. For those of you that need to know, the frame rate is up in the top right-hand corner. That's the frame rate counter. I started off with just doing uncapped frames on my PC, and my PC is a pretty hefty PC at this point. It's a 4080 with a brand new CPU. It's only about a month or two old. I'm not trying to flex. I'm just saying that I have a PC that could easily push some really high frames. And even at the higher frame rate, it did not seem to do any more damage. But to be fair, I was not getting 280 plus frames with my PC. There's just so much going on in the dungeon that it can't just have that many frames. There's just too much going on the screen. And to be fair, most PC gamers are not going to get 280 plus frames. And if they do, it's with the top of the top line systems. So here's 58 to 60 FPS. I'm basically just showing you this because it looks to be exactly the same as my uncapped frame rate. There's no massive extra tick of damage at the end other than the volatile explosions that are supposed to go off. Again, I couldn't replicate this because I could not get to the super high frame rate, but the 58 to 60 FPS seem to be basically the same as the uncapped frame rate, or generally what most PC players are using. Again, I've put the damage numbers on the screen. We've got those damage numbers, but there's supposed to be an extra tick of damage that occurs that does not have a damage number that does more damage after that fact. I didn't have a great damage phase on this, but this is 30 FPS right here. And this looks a little bit smoother because I recorded it on an Elgato 4K 60, so it looks a little bit smoother, but look in the top right-hand corner, you can see that it's 30 FPS. The basic idea I want to get across is that even if you are at a lower frame rate, Leviathan's Breath is still a viable choice. If you don't like it, you certainly don't have to use it. Use linear fusion rifles. I like it specifically because I don't have to reload it other than just re-knocking the bows. I can leave heavy weapon ammo all over and just literally walk over it really quickly, and then I just have it. I don't have to reload a rocket launcher or do anything else like that. Now, I do notice that my Gathering Storm Super does seem to go away a lot faster at the 30 FPS, or it doesn't seem to do as much damage. The biggest thing I want to show is that there's not a massive tick of damage with Leviathan's Breath, at least as far as all the testing that we did. Now here we're still at 30 frames per second, and we did 2.6 million in one damage phase. All we're trying to say is that if you are someone who can push your frames past 280 frames in a dungeon uncapped in Destiny 2, then you are the exception to the rule. It's possible that you can get 280 plus frames inside of this dungeon, but even with a brand new graphics card and a top of the line CPU, I was not able to replicate this. So Leviathan's Breath is still an option for people who are on console, but if you don't have the catalyst or you don't like it, just use a linear fusion. All right, back to the actual build here. We're going to be using a very similar build to how we did the opening section, where we're using Assassin's Cowl. I'm of course going to be using Arbalest to rip off the shield from the wizard once I get to the damage phase, and we'll do one swap. The rest of the loadout here is pretty simple. I'm going to be using a trace rifle, nothing special, just a void one. You don't have to have it. I just use it to get rid of the moths really easily. A trace rifle is great for that. And then I'm going to be using a cold comfort rocket launcher, again with bipod, to generate more heavy ammo when I switch. Here's all of my loadouts, the Arc Strider build. Here's all my armor mods, so you can build everything else out. And once I'm ready to do damage and I've hit her with the Arbalest shot, I'm going to switch to my Leviathan's Breath build. So at this point, I'm ready to do massive amount of damage. There's really no difference other than having massive amounts of surge and time dilation. There's really not much more to it than that. Just check the dim links if you are wanting to get a build. The biggest thing is just changing to Leviathan's Breath. And if you're running a linear fusion rifle, you don't even have to switch. Just have on Arbalest and put on a linear fusion rifle and you're good to go. Whatever you like to do, that's going to be good. I use Leviathan's Breath and I capped myself here at 59 FPS, and it took me 5 damage phases, and it was not very difficult because I just took my time and I knew the process. Speaking of the process, here's the solo breakdown. The first thing you're going to need to do is watch out whenever the Necromancer spawns up Vorlog, who's going to be a knight that has a sword. Whenever she does that, it's going to spawn a bunch of moths that you'll need to take care of. It's not very hard to deal with, and a trace rifle deals with them handily. Step 2, look for the 3 knights that are going to be scattered throughout the arena and take them out as soon as you can. It clears the field up significantly when you don't have to worry about boomer knights hitting you. The 3 knights are going to be 1 by Oryx's head, 2 by the rally flag area, and 3 by the right knee of Oryx. When you're taking care of all this other stuff, feel free to dodge melee as much as you need to. With Assassin's Cowl, you can just basically move freely throughout the area and stay invisible. It's one of the reasons why hunters are actually really good for soloing this dungeon. When you're invisible, try to reveal the ritual points. At this point, you'll locate the different nodes throughout the arena that you'll have to activate. What you'll then need to do is kill Vorlog while you're standing within one of those 3 areas. If you feel like you're going to be in danger, just melee something to go invisible and you're good. At this point, you'll need to align the circle and the symbol that is spawned up correctly. And again, watch out for the moths because Vorlog is going to be spawned. At this point, I'm looking towards the wizard and making sure I knock out all those moths as soon as they spawn up. Now, at this point, you'll need to kill Vorlog within 3 of the ritual points and align 3 of the symbols total. If you accidentally kill him when you're not in a ritual point, she'll just respawn him. So don't worry if you make a mistake or something like that, but you will need to worry about more moths. Once you've aligned all 3 of the symbols and 3 symbols are actually open in the main area, what you'll need to do is then go kill the 3 Lucent Hive that are located on the outside area. Through the water, you'll see that there are some caves where there is water. You have to go hunt down the 3 Lucent Hive. Again, a great map from Reddit. Off to the left-hand side is the Lucent Knight. In the back area is the Lucent Acolyte, and on the far right side is the Lucent Wizard. You have to hunt all 3 of them down and get their vestige and then deposit it. What you'll need to do is go into one of those outside arenas and you'll see a symbol in the middle of the room. You'll need to memorize that, but you'll also need to hunt down the Lucent Hive. Now you need to be careful because the Lucent Hive will always be using their super on you, so be really careful at this spot. I kind of went for it here, but again, I've done this enough so I kind of know how much damage I can take. Look at the symbol before you finish the ghost and memorize what it is because it disappears right away. You'll then need to head back to the main arena, and then you need to deposit the vestige into the matching symbol. However, you can't do this until you activate Deep Sight. So being invisible, very good. We use that in the first encounter, and none of the enemies are really going to attack us if we're invisible. Then, while you're invisible and you've activated the Deep Sight, go imbue the area with the Vestige of Light, and then you can move on to the other Lucent Hive areas. Now, you need to make sure that you have the symbol in the correct area, because if you don't, you will instantly die and you'll lose your solo flawless. So to continue to the damage phase, you need to get each one of the Lucent Hive, the Knight, the Acolyte, and the Wizard. Again, remember the process of looking at the symbol and then finishing the ghost, memorize which one that is, and then head back to the main arena, activate Deep Sight, and of course go invisible before you do that. That way the enemies can't actually hunt you down. And then, of course, imbue the correct symbol with the Vestige of Light. Once you have the 3rd Vestige of Light from the 3rd Lucent Hive, activate the Deep Sight like you would any other time, but take a second and clear out all these garbage mobs. They'll come chase you down while you're doing damage, and it's better to take care of them now as you have time. Imbue the area with the Vestige of Light, and then instantly hit them with a shot of Arbalest, and at this point, you can switch to your Leviathan's Breath. I then will dodge here because all of these Thrall will be spawned up. One shot should take care of all of them with this build. As long as you dodge and then melee, and then you're good for damage. Doing that thing where you actually dodge really quickly and kill all those Thrall will give you plenty of space to move. Now, what I'm going to do as well is I'm going to start to move around the room. I'm going to make sure I keep her in my line of sight, because if I don't, she will disappear. But I want to make sure I've got some cover and that I'm looking around for ammo. If you don't kill all of the enemies, they will start to hunt you down. You can see that there is an Acolyte to the left of me that is shooting me and kind of annoying me. So you want to make sure you take a second if you've got time to knock them out. Here's a really good example of a great damage phase. I'm going to imbue here with the Vestige of Light, instantly turn, hit her with my Arbalest, and then really quickly hit her with my super, change to my Leviathan's Breath loadout. That will give the other Thrall time to chase me down. I dodge real quick, and I've got lots of ammo around me, so I can basically just take a second, keep hitting her with my Leviathan's Breath, or if you're using your linear fusion rifle, you can certainly do that as well. Now, try not to stay in just one spot. You can see I'm kind of moving left and right. But at this point, I'm just weapons free. Nothing's chasing me down. I can grab heavy ammo wherever I want to. All I have to do is re-knock my bow and I'm good to go. Now that's a reason I'm not going to use grenades or rockets on the wizard. I'm probably going to miss, so I really like precision weapons on the wizard as well. Again, I don't like using rockets necessarily. There's nothing wrong with using rockets if you're in a group, but there was a great damage phase. Took out a significant amount of damage. I just had lots of time, lots of ammo, and you just rinse and repeat that process. Okay, so some tips and tricks for you in this final encounter. First things first, the Chest of Orcs is always going to be used, but it can never be the first activation point ever. It's always the second or the third. So go activate one of the other points and then go to the chest after that. In addition, when you're looking to activate the different nodes, the symbol you need to align will always be where you previously killed Vorlog. So you don't have to run around looking for things. Just look around for the circle where you previously killed Vorlog or you activated, and then make sure, of course, you're always killing the moths. Just like Ecthar, you can use the water areas for safety. Just make sure you don't stay in there too long and that you've got a plan, but you will generate life and ability energy when you're in there. Go invisible as much as possible by using combination blow. It's really solid for this, especially when you're going for the deep sight. This is really solid. So before you deep sight, make sure you hit someone and go invis. One of the best tips that I can give is that you get to choose where you get to do damage between the 3 symbols that spawn up. Since I'm a hunter, I really don't like to do damage from the chest, but I really like to do it from the different sides where I can take cover. But I also want to be looking and thinking about where there's ammo. For example, there's going to be a ton of ammo strewn about in the middle. So here by the foot of Oryx, I can basically just do as much damage as possible when the time comes, and I can just weave over and grab more ammo. All right, folks, that's all you have to do is rinse and repeat that process. I really like this build, especially for this, because we have control of the situation and we get to do this in a relaxed sort of way. The biggest reason why many people fail their solo flawlesses is they get too excited or they get out of control or they forget something. And with this, it's pretty much foolproof as long as you can hit your shots, take your time, and of course, don't forget the ghost. And with that, you have solo flawlessed the Ghosts of the Deep on a hunter. Now, I've actually done all 3 of the subclasses now, and if you've watched all of them or made it to the end of this video, thank you so much. If you need any help on doing this dungeon, or you want to ask questions or get help doing raids, dungeons, exotic missions, things like that, come on over to twitch.tv/ManoDestra. Feel free to join our community Discord down below. We'd love to have you. And of course, if and only if you learned something from this video, feel free to subscribe for more Destiny 2 content. We would love to have you in the channel, and I'm looking forward to giving you guys some good guides as we head into Season 23. Good hunting, Guardians. I will see you next time in the universe of Destiny.